Well, hello there, you beautiful bugger. Your Uncle Spurt here with Motorola's fresh new Edge 50 Fusion. The cheapest of Motorola's 2024 Edge flagship phones at just 349 British pound. And it's the first Fusion phone since 2022. And Moto's phone is currently dividing critics on their own UK website, although that one-star review is from Darren, who actually seems to be pissed off at the older Moto Edge 30. And for some reason has just taken out his ire on the Fusion. I mean, that's a completely different phone, Darren. It's kind of like saying the Spice Girls are crap because you don't like pickled onion sandwiches. But what of the Edge 50 Fusion? Is Darren accidentally accurate, or is it an absolute banger for that budget-friendly asking price? Well, let's whip it on out of that box, test out the camera, the game, and all that good stuff. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So what have you got crammed into that box besides the Motorola Edge 50 Fusion? Well, hallelujah, Moto's actually shoved an adapter in the box, 89 watts. Oh no, hang on, wait, 68 watts. Got yourself a USB cable, and they've even chucked in a protective condom case, quite a rigid one. And as with all recent Motorola smartphones, the box is perfume scented. Oh, so raised eyebrows all around when my wife wanders in here later. So here we are in all of its glory, the Motorola Edge 50 Fusion. And my first thoughts upon yanking it out of that box were, ruddy hell, this thing is pretty light, especially considering it's a whopping great 6.7 incher. And it certainly doesn't feel that big because the screen does curve subtly around the edges there, so pretty much no bezel action, pretty decent hand feel. So like the rest of the Motorola Edge 50 family, looks pretty damn slick. And personally, I can just about squish it into my shorts without too much consternation. Thankfully, no issues with the screen sensitivity despite the slightly curved display. Swipes and pokes still registering absolutely fine. There's a bit of Gorilla Glass 5 up front, but no pre-installed screen protector. You might want to slap one of those on yourself. And then around back, well, this right here is the forest blue model of the Motorola Edge 50 Fusion. It actually comes in two types of blue, forest blue and marshmallow blue. Is it just me, or are neither of those things blue? This forest blue model is sadly just constructed from plastic. If you grab the marshmallow one, that's vegan leather. Otherwise, there's also a hot pink option, baby. And that's a vegan suede affair, apparently. Got the same style of design here on the Edge 50 Fusion as the rest of the Edge 50 family. Looks pretty smart. That camera bump is a decidedly subtle affair, just slightly rising from the rest of the surface of the phone. And the Edge 50 Fusion is also IP68 water and dust resistant, so just like premium blowers, it can be fully submerged in the drink for a good hour, hour and a half without worry. Because you probably won't want to just leave it underwater for the best part of an hour. You'll want to pick it up and towel it off just to be sure. That is certainly one of the big upgrades over the old Edge 30 Fusion. To actually unlock the Motorola Edge 50 Fusion, well, it's an in-display fingerprint sensor, just your basic optical effort, but seems to work beautifully well as long as your thumbs aren't, dripping wet or anything. And you got that face unlock action as backup as well. Just tap the power button, scans your mug, and as you can see, it's probably actually faster than the fingerprint sensor, if not quite as secure. Now, no heavy launchers or bullshit here on the Edge 50 Fusion. It's just a lovely bit of stock Android action. You got your Google Discover feed, you got your apps tray, you got your notifications bar that looks very similar to what you'll get on the likes of the Pixel smartphones. And Android has been slightly modified. You've got some custom fonts and such forth. And unfortunately, I have noticed that the amount of crapware shoveled onto Motorola phones has expanded considerably in recent times. It's like it's spent a night with a Xiaomi smartphone and now it's got a bad case of Booking.com, Facebook, LinkedIn. Got a whole bunch of just random shitty games. I mean, what the hell is this? Oh, what a surprise, an advert immediately pops up. I mean, this thing looks like it was designed by an 8-year-old in MS Paint. So you have to spend a good 10 minutes going through all of these, uninstalling them. But Motorola does at least chuck on some pretty useful apps of its own creation. The first one to start with is definitely the Moto app, very simply named, but it's packed with lots of great tools. It's got lots of customization features in here, for instance. Some handy gesture control, including, oh yes, my favorite baby. You got some pretty helpful security tools stuffed on here as well, including a bit of phishing detection. Pin pad scramble I particularly like as well. Just jumbles up those numbers when you're entering your pin so no one can get a sneaky glance and easily memorize it. And a bunch of other stuff, including a dedicated game mode for you game fiends, but more on that later. Bit of smart connect action as well, so you can quickly hook up to the likes of a PC or a monitor and then share your files, your apps, all your other bits. And Motorola seems to be slowly catching up on the software support front as well. So with the Edge 50 Fusion, you're guaranteed 3 OS updates, that's Android 15, 16, and then 17 beyond that. And you're also guaranteed 4 years of security patching too. Of course, how promptly will these updates and security patches arrive? That's another matter. Don't seem to be quite as on it as some other rivals in that front, but certainly respectable support, if not quite as long as a OnePlus or a Samsung or a Google. And as for that display tech, well, it's pretty solid stuff for this sort of price point. It's a 6.7-inch POLED panel, just like what you'll find slapped on the Motorola Edge 50 Pro and the Ultra, 2400 by 1080 pixels, so full HD plus resolution, keeping your Netflix shenanigans looking super crispy. You got 10-bit color reproduction, and certainly those visuals are poppy as out on the default vivid setting. But you can change that if you like to. More natural output, tweak the color temperature, etc. Sadly, no HDR streaming support here on the Edge 50 Fusion, though. Certainly non-reported by Netflix or in any other specs that I checked out. All the same though, you've got sharp contrast as you'd kind of expect from an OLED screen. And this panel is eye-searingly bright when you max it out, hitting not far off 2000 nits. So yeah, you can comfortably see what's going on outdoors, even if it's a sunny day, so you don't live in the UK then. And that refresh rate maxes out at 144 Hz, highly respectable, but you can also slap it at 60 Hz or 120 Hz if you prefer. And bugger all to complain about with the audio as well. You've got a stereo speaker setup here with full Dolby Atmos support. Your lugs will be spaffing in sheer joy. The audio quality certainly as good as any other mid-ranger around this price point that I've tested. Let's boost the volume. iGuru F1 to create your own beer is still undeniably more complicated than simply popping off down the co-op for a 12-pack of Stella. But seriously, compared with regular home brewing, it's an absolute piece of piss. Even a disinterested 6-year-old or an ant out of Ant and Deck could probably do it. So when you peak that volume, it's bloody loud, let me tell you. No worries hearing what is going on, even if there's quite a lot of raucous activity in your general vicinity. Thankfully, the quality is still pretty good too. So certainly the media chop's pretty solid, but what about the performance? Well, the Motorola Edge Fusion 50 is powered by Qualcomm's Snapdragon 7S Gen 2 chipset, as also previously found stuffed inside of the Poco X6, the Redmi Note 13 Pro, a few other mid-rangery type phones that I may have fondled in the past. However, just a wee warning, apparently the Edge 50 Fusion in some regions will be downgraded to a Snapdragon 6 Gen 1. So you might want to have a good old squint at the specs list in your region's Motorola website just to check. My Edge 50 Fusion review model was backed by 12 gigs of RAM, which I think is standard here in the UK. Seen a couple of wee judders while using the camera app, but that's pretty much it. So yeah, the everyday running is as smooth as you would expect, and gamers can even get more complex titles like Zenless Zone Zero on the go as long as you keep the graphics settings low. I still saw the occasional wee juzzer here and there during my hour-long gaming session, but overall more playable than I expected it to be. The screen was quite responsive, although occasionally when I went to poke a menu option or a conversation option, it would take a couple of jabs to actually register, sometimes mistaking my prods for swipes. But apart from that, I had a good old time smashing gribbly things in the face over and over. And the Motorola Edge 50 Fusion remained cool throughout that full-on hour of Zenless Zone Zero action as well. Didn't even begin to get slightly toasty really. And then of course Moto game time is just a quick swipe away. I was playing in the turbo performance mode to give this game every possible chance. You got a few other options chucked in there as well, including a screen sensitivity one which doesn't really seem to do anything. My Edge 50 Fusion comes with 256 gigs of storage, and you don't have any micro SD expandability. In fact, you've only got a single SIM slot in there as well. And no worries as far as battery life goes, because you've got a 5000 mAh battery stuffed inside of the Motorola Edge 50 Fusion. That combined with the stock Android experience, the fairly energy efficient Snapdragon platform, means you'll get all day play out of this thing. No worries, even with hours and hours of screen on time. Even gaming didn't drain it particularly fast. You'll still get a solid 5 or 6 hours of non-stop action on the go, and that's with fairly intensive titles. But if for whatever reason you do find yourself running low on juice throughout the day, well, no worries, you've got 68 watt wide charging support, so bung a cable in it, it'll be back up to full in a jiffy. No wireless charging support, but then I wouldn't expect it at this sort of price. The only phone I've reviewed recently that's a mid-ranger with wireless charging support is the HMD Skyline. Now let's finish this lovely wee video on the Motorola Edge 50 Fusion with a squint at that there camera tech. And it's a dual lens setup headed up by a 50 meg Sony Lightyear 700C sensor with optical image stabilization and seconded by a 13 meg ultra wide angle shooter. That camera app is as easy to use as always. You can quickly and easily flick between the ultra wide and the standard shooter with a tap here. You've also got a macro mode in there if you fancy a bit of that. And of course you've got all the bonus camera modes you would expect, like a portrait mode, you've got a bit of night vision action for those low light shots, and a full on bit of pro mode as well. If you want to shoot some raw format images, you can piddle about with the likes of the ISO levels, the white balance, the shutter speed. But for these test samples, which I shot over the past few days, I just stuck it on the automatic photo mode like most people will do. And I was pretty impressed with the results on the whole. As long as the lighting conditions on complete CAC, then you can generally get some bright, colourful shots. Respectable amount of detail packed into every frame as well if you do need to crop in. And there is a high-res mode in case you need to crop in even more. And if you're dealing with a dodgy contrast type situation, highly recommend sticking on the auto enhance feature. Takes a wee while to capture and process an image, but certainly produces some pretty good HDR type results. And in low light, you probably will want to stick on the night vision as well, which again takes its sweet time, but helps to brighten up the images a bit, even if the color reproduction isn't exactly natural. And that 13 meg ultra wide angle shooter is pretty basic, but it's there if you want a more dramatic angle. Just want to cram a bit more into the frame. And for your video type shenanigans, well, you can capture up to 4K resolution footage. But if you stick it on 60 frames per second, you are bumped back down to full HD resolution. And again, here's just a quick bit of video footage that I captured on the Motorola Edge 50 Fusion at 4K resolution. It's absolutely fine for basic, simple home movies, but certainly again, don't shoot in strong contrast or when the lighting is generally a bit balls. Audio pickup seems fine though, no troubles on that front. And then finally up front, you've got a 32 meg selfie shooter, which is okay. Low light selfies are a bit grainy, and if you turn on the screen flash feature, well, I turn a bit neon pink really. But otherwise can capture some respectable looking selfies that you can slap up on Facebook or Insta or whatever you want to do. Me, I just put them straight in the bin. And there you have it, my lovelies. That in a tasty wee nutshell is the fresh new Motorola Edge 50 Fusion. As I say, it can be yours for just over £300 here in the UK. And there's certainly a lot to like about it, from the full-on IP68 water and dust resistance, the generally slick design, the excellent battery life, the stock Android experience, the fact that Motorola is finally delivering a few years of software support rather than just 1 or 2. It's not a particularly exciting or thrilling phone, but it certainly does the job at a respectable price. So anyway, that's what this bald northern twonk reckons, but it'd be great to hear your thoughts on the Motorola Edge 50 Fusion down in the comments below. Please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a really wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!